What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about the end of days. The manual transmission it's almost gone. But does this news surprise me? No. Not at all. I am a big time manual transmission advocate. I have a manual transmission in my 1M.
I am telling you right now, that motherfucker back there is not real.
I'm just kidding. It's a 1M clone. It's a 135, not a real 1M. And I also have a manual transmission in my E92 M3. It's safe to say that I love manual transmissions, but that doesn't mean that I don't understand why BMW is making this decision ultimately. And so in today's video, we're gonna talk a little bit about the decision to remove manual transmissions from future cars, how you guys feel about it, and how I feel about it. It should be a good one. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. All right, guys, so it really shouldn't be too big of a surprise to you that we are going to be effectively losing manual transmissions in our beloved BMWs at some point in the near future here. BMW currently does have a manual transmission in the G80s, the G87s, the G82s, but the higher-ups at BMW M Division have hinted that there is going to be an end of days for the manual transmission. Now, like I said, does this surprise me? No, not really. I mean, this is the direction that we're headed. I think that we're honestly still lucky to even have combustion engines, seeing how mostly everything these days is going towards EV or even hybrid. I do think that these manual transmission cars are going to be worth quite a bit more in the future. It's kind of how we look at classic cars now. Some of the older Porsches and some of the older BMWs have just gone up in value because they don't make them like they used to. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best or they drive the best or that they're the fastest. It just means that they're classics and they do have value. So I put a reel up on my Instagram.
What the is this world? What have they done to us? What did they do to us?
Basically shedding some of the news that we will be losing the manual transmission at some point in the near future in our BMWs. And I got some of your feedback on that. So that is what I'm gonna be sharing with you right now. Unworthy Motors, right from the get-go, manual over auto. Matt, right below that, I love manuals, but you can't compete with an automatic and shifting speeds. You essentially make your car slower these days with manuals. I hate to say it. So this is the point that a lot of people make when they start talking about manual versus automatic. It all comes down to speed, man. Automatic's faster than the manual. I think there's a huge misconception as to why people buy manual cars. They don't buy them to be fast. It's never about being fast in a manual car. Is it cool if you have a manual car and you are faster than someone who has an automatic? Absolutely. But manual cars have always been about the feeling. They've always been about the connection. They've always been about being in control of the car's dynamics and mechanics yourself. Unworthy Motors comes back with, oh, I don't disagree at all. 100% DCT and ZF8 are faster, but manual is more fun for the spirited driver. Nothing beats rowing gears. I could not agree more, Dallas. However, I do love the DCT transmission, and unfortunately, we are never gonna see the DCT transmission from BMW as well, which is a huge kick in the nuts. I think the ZF8 is really fast. It's also really good and probably faster than the DCT, but it's soulless. It's like these EV vehicles. There's no soul to them, and that's why we like our cars with manuals. However, I will say that the newer BMWs do not feel right with the manual transmission. They're just too big, they're too heavy. The manual transmission does not suit them well at all. That's just my opinion. However, I have had this discussion with quite a few people and they seem to agree with me. Batmat responds to Dallas, I agree, but I think these companies are finding it more of a waste of money for them. This is also sort of true. You have to think about supplies. And as companies go towards electronic vehicles, they're starting to make more parts for electronic vehicles. I think at some point, inevitably, companies that produce manual transmissions are going to slow down and probably not produce as many. So the actual supplies themselves won't be there either. Unworthy responds, I agree. From a production standpoint, I see why they would discontinue it. But like all good things, it'll come back around. I don't think it will, man. I wish it would. I really wish it would, but I don't think these will come back around. Wes hops into the conversation. Unworthy Motors, it's kind of dumb though. Performance cars are in a way already a waste of money. We are a very small percentage of a company's consumer base. If we are already spending more than the average for a performance car, then at least provide the option. I think the data shows that the majority of people go for the automatics. And you also have to think about who is BMW making these new performance cars for, and I don't think it's people like you or me. The majority of people are not going to be die-hard performance enthusiasts that are buying these cars, and BMW knows that. That's why they make the decisions that they make. Yes, there is a consumer base for manual transmissions, but it doesn't mean that from a sales perspective, it works. So BMW is going to listen to the analytics. They're going to follow the money. But I will say that that's one reason that I've always respected Porsche and BMW up until this point, is because they've continued to offer the manual transmission for people like ourselves. What's your forte? Boo. Now, James, I know for a fact that the only reason you're saying boo and that you don't like manual transmissions is because you can't drive a manual car.
Clutch. There you go. Clutch in. There you go. Oh, God. I'm sorry.
I'm kidding. I've seen you drive a manual transmission car. However, I don't know if driving would be the correct term. But you should buy yourself a manual transmission vehicle, James, and you might just enjoy it after getting used to it. Unworthy Motors claps back at what's your forte just because you can't drive stick. Ooh. The burn. But then again, there is a divide between enthusiasts in the BMW community. We have the guys who want to go fast. We have the guys who want to row gears. I'll be honest with you guys, I really do like having both options. Currently, right now, I don't have both options. I have two pretty slow cars that are manual transmission, and really they're just for driving pleasure. They're more about the connection and the feel. But that's just the phase that I'm going through in my life right now. I've had plenty of cars that were ZF8 or DCT transmission cars that were just fast in a straight line. I think there's a clear place for both of these transmissions to exist. However, I don't think that we should be speaking in absolutes and say that there should only be one or there can't be this one. I think that is just silly. My guy Blake's Garage comments, make it extra dumb because they ditched the proper dual clutch also. Yes, unfortunately, they are also getting rid of the DCT transmission, which just pains me because I love the DCT transmission. They have gone over to the ZF8 transmission, and I will say it is incredibly smooth. It is very fast, probably faster than the DCT, but again, it just strips away some of that feeling that you get out of the DCT transmission, and it just doesn't quite hit the same. 984 Kloss comes in and says, this was my point. I drive a manual 335i, but that DCT is amazing. I'd be less upset by this if they stayed with the DCT instead of the ZF8 speed. The ZF8 speed is actually a really good transmission. It performs very well. It's incredibly smooth. This also goes back to my other point saying BMW knows who their audience is. Yes, there are performance enthusiasts like ourselves, but that's really not the majority of people that are buying these BMWs. A lot of these BMW owners just want fast and comfortable. They don't care about having the hard clamping, the hard shifting, the manual transmission, rowing the gear. They don't care about that. They just want their expensive, nice looking BMW M Performance car to drive fast, do it comfortably, and make people turn their heads. G Sully comments, the ZF8 is still an incredible transmission, to be fair, and he's right. It is a very good transmission. Blake's Garage swinging back in again, but is it a dual clutch? No, has a torque converter, so kind of garbage, still not motorsport like the F chassis. Now, Blake loves his F chassis BMWs. He tracks his F82 M4 heavily. Make sure you guys check out his channel if you're interested in BMW content and track content, so I completely understand where he's coming from. He loves these cars. It's a big part of who he is and what he enjoys as an enthusiast. And I think Blake also speaks for a big portion of BMW consumers. Not everybody wants that very fast, straight line speed car. They want a good feeling car. 984 Kloss comes in again and says, I don't disagree. I've owned a car with one, but the ZF8 speed feels incredible until you've driven an F8X with the DCT trans. At least that's my take. It's a good take. It's fair. Kara Friend 10 comes in and says, I'm no hater, but what's the point of a manual transmission in a 500 plus horsepower car? You buy those for performance and you certainly lose it when choosing a manual over automatic transmission. With that being said, I can understand why people love the manual like you do, but then again, you can always buy non-M's and manual trans and make them look great like your cars do. Well, thank you for the kind words, sir. Again, you know, I think people heavily lean on the performance side of things when talking about automatic transmissions, and I totally get it because it's true. Automatic transmissions are faster. They're going to be the faster way to go if that is what's important to you. And then the comment right below it, this is an E36 owner, so you know they're gonna come in hot with the manual transmission vote. Selena, the E36, some people prefer manuals over autos. I think that Kara Friend said that. To be fair, he completely noted that some people do prefer manuals over automatics. And he said, again, he responded, yeah, I recognize that. But putting love and preference aside and going through facts, there's literally no logical explanation to have a manual in a car powerful as M's these days. I think he's correct. I think that the new BMW M cars, they are packed with a ton of power. They are super fast. And like I said before, the manual transmission feels totally out of place in them. It feels like a complete afterthought that was just used by BMW to appease the people who prefer manual transmissions. Now the G87 being a little bit smaller might feel a little bit better, but again, it's a heavy car. All of these heavy cars feel weird with manual transmissions. The lighter cars feel great with manual transmissions. Selena, the E36, jumps back in and says, I mean, I've seen people have cars with higher horsepower and running a manual with it. Of course, there are manual cars that make really high horsepower. And in my opinion, that is super cool because I mean, there's nothing cooler than dusting another high horsepower car when you have a manual and they have an automatic. That's what we call driver mod. Kara Friend responds, that's true, but it beats the point. Why did you upgrade your car to 1,000 horsepower just to make yourself at a disadvantage if you race or do runs? I think sometimes people just want to have a really high horsepower car that's manual to prove that you can have a fast manual car. And some people really do think that they can shift a manual car faster than an automatic. They can't, but some people do really think that. Unworthy Motors comes back in and says, as someone running 500 plus in a manual M4, I find myself bored as hell in a DCT on the back roads and mountain roads where I'm taking advantage of all the handling benefits you get with an M and track-based benefits you get while rowing gears. Simply saying automatic performs better than manual is a great blanket statement, but doesn't cover the other circumstances where manual is still preferred even with higher horsepower M's. DCT kicks ass in a straight line, but if I'm gonna be on a back road, I want to row gears myself even at 500 horsepower. What I will say about that is DCT is still extremely fun on the back roads and on a track. I understand how manual can obviously be super fun on the back roads. I do enjoy my cars on the back roads, and manual is a blast when you're driving on the back roads and mountain roads. But the DCT is still really, really fun. If it's a good DCT like DCT or PDK, that is a ton of fun. The ZF8 is just a little bit more numb and, in my opinion, not fun. It's faster, but it's not fun. Kara Friend responds to Unworthy Motors, to be fair, rowing the gears is a good point, and I cannot argue with that as much as I cannot argue with how someone likes the feel of driving a manual. But from BMW's standpoint, it doesn't make much sense to offer manuals in such powerful cars. Again, going back to what BMW is doing and why they're making the decisions that they're making, I don't know if it has to do with the amount of power in the cars as much as it actually has to do with BMW understanding their customer base and what actually is selling. They have the analytics. They are not stupid. They're making decisions based off of what makes them money as a company so they continue to sell cars. cars. Unworthy comes back in. I see what you are saying from a production standpoint. It doesn't make much sense to have a manual. Not enough demand. Selena, the E36 is coming back in. In all honesty, I just like being more engaged with my car, which is why I do prefer manuals over autos in most cases. I have nothing against autos, as I literally use them to get groceries, but as you find out, manuals are just more enjoyable. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we all know that. Kara Friend coming back in, I totally understand, but I, for one, drive an DCT F80, and I literally never let it shift on its own. I'm always doing the shifting myself on the paddle shifters or on the knob. So in that sense, I'm always engaged with it. Wow. Yes, you are engaged with it, and it's still really fun, but it's not the amount of engagement as a clutch pedal and actually rowing the gears. But I understand what you're saying. So in that sense, I'm also engaged with it, but it's also nice to know that I can let it shift myself. Yes, having the best of both worlds is fantastic. There are definitely times where I'm driving my manual car and I'm like, I wish this was just DCT. I don't feel like driving right now. Like in stop and go traffic or whatever. Selena, the E36, I mean, I drive almost any car, so I understand what you're saying, but I feel like what matters the most to you is enjoying what you drive. Yes, my friends, that is the truth. At the end of the day, all that matters is what do you like? Go buy what you like. And if you like older cars with manual transmissions, go buy the older cars with manual transmissions because I think they're better anyways. I think the newer cars with manual transmissions kind of suck. They're doing all the rev matching, everything. All these older cars are so much more fun to drive with a manual transmission. That's just my take. Harris Nadeem comes in and says, good riddance, BMW made some terrible manuals lately. Oh man, again, I don't know if it's really the transmission that's so bad. I think it's just the pairing of the transmission with the car or the chassis that it's in. I feel like a broken record, but they're just too large, they're too heavy, and they just don't feel right with manual transmissions. They feel completely out of place. I think that driving the G80 with a manual transmission was one of the biggest letdowns ever for me as an enthusiast and someone who just loves the BMW brand and M cars with manual transmissions. I was so excited to drive that car, and I thought that if I ever bought one, it would be with a manual transmission because I'm a manual transmission guy. That's what I like. But dude, when I drove that G80 with a manual transmission, what a letdown. Jimmy Jim Herda comments, welp, there goes the prices. Stonks going up on the manual transmission cars. I'm really curious to see what happens with some of the older manual transmission vehicles offered by BMW. You know, if you drive like an E30 M3 or just an E30 in general that is a manual transmission car, they are super fun, but they're not the greatest. I mean, let's be honest. The E30 M3 is iconic. It's an incredible car that paved the way for all of these other M cars, but we've got to be honest, at this point we are used to cars that have so much power, that handle so good. If you aren't really just all about having the nostalgia of an E30 M3, everything outside of that is kind of just meh. If I own one, I'd probably rarely ever drive it. I find cars like this to be a little bit more of the sweet spot because they're not incredibly old, not incredibly new, and they have enough of both features to keep me happy while driving a manual transmission. But I am curious to see what happens with a lot of these manual vehicles that are a little bit older. If you look at the E30 M3 prices, they've skyrocketed. 70s, 80s, $90,000 to get an E30 M3. I'm curious to see what happens when manual transmissions stop getting produced and these cars that have manual transmissions, I mean, what's gonna happen with those prices? Are they gonna go up? We'll see. Rodney James 007 says they have warned us for a while now. They have. I mean, to be fair, the entire industry has warned us for a while now. The writing has been on the walls. As soon as we started going to EV, that was it. Start the countdown. And none of this really surprises me. I know where we're headed, and I think that it's just important to really cherish the cars that you love. And don't sell them. I know that's a ridiculous statement coming from me, someone who always sells his cars, but don't sell the cars that you love. Descending Dove comes in with a comment, the ZF8 is so much better than the manual. BMW manual is so bad. Even Toyota couldn't band-aid a solution. We're better off anyways. I disagree, Mr. Descending Dove. The manual transmission in the Supra is really, really nice. And I think that it has a lot to do, again, with the whole package, the pairing of a smaller, lighter car with a manual transmission. I don't think Toyota's job was to band-aid anything. I think that they had the right car to put that transmission in, and it just felt good. 2Kane F30 says, thank the heavens for ZF transmissions. At this point, manuals of the past will last. Plenty of amazing manual transmission cars out here. They're worth investing in and keeping the odometers rolling. I'm not mad at them for moving on. I agree with that. I think that is a very level-headed response to this. Manuals of the past will last. I like how he said that. that. We've seen that a lot of these cars that are very special, like the E92 M3 with its naturally aspirated V8 engine, are holding value and going up in value because they just don't make them like they used to. I do believe that having some of these older cars with manual transmissions and even some of the lesser spec, like single hump, no nav, these cars will most certainly go up in value if they are maintained properly and still in really good condition in the coming of years. Plenty of amazing manual transmission cars out there worth investing in, and keep the odometer rolling. I couldn't agree more, and I think that that's a very fair way to put it. We should be happy with the transmissions and the cars that we've had in the past, and if you love them, buy the older ones. The older ones are better anyways with manual transmissions. Buy the older ones, trust me. You don't want an EV car in manual, you know what I mean? You don't want a hybrid car in manual, and that's where we're headed, guys. I think right now we should just be happy that we still have combustion engines being produced. Well, you guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. You guys comment down below. Are you an automatic transmission person? Are you a manual transmission person? What is your take? Are you upset about this news? Did you also know that this was coming inevitably at some point? Will you be buying older manual cars because of this? Do you think the price of older manual cars are going to go up or hold value? What kind of BMW consumer are you? Lots of aspects to be considered here and lots of questions to be asked, but at the end of the day, I'm just happy that I have the two cars that I really prefer at this moment that are my two manual transmission vehicles. However, I do think I want to add an automatic car in the future, whether that will be a ZF8 or a DCT or maybe a PDK. We'll find out. But nonetheless, you guys, I appreciate you for watching the videos. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe if you enjoyed this content. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. It does help with the YouTube algorithm. But that is it for today's video. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.